We have a match today between Mort and rsilverstein12, who both placed third in their respective divisions for the friendly mix tournament. And so now they're playing the round of 16 match amongst all the third place finishers. And it's currently 1-0 in Mort's favor after Mort won the first game. About to jump into game 2. All right, what do we have here? Draw. We got Wild Hunt, Nobles, Hunting Party, Experiment, Action, Royal Carriage, Nobles, Villa. Trashing is Trade Route, which is pretty weak. Buys, you got Trade Route and Villa have plus buy. Contraband has plus buy, but it's terrible. And Smugglers can gain things as well. So there's definitely enough to build here. When there's Villa around, you tend to want to just stock up on terminal draw cards like Nobles or Wild Hunt, because you can never have too much draw and not enough action. Because if you find yourself mid-turn running out of action, you can just buy a Villa mid-turn, and it goes straight to your hand. You go back to your action phase. So I would think that Wild Hunt Nobles would be very good here. Hunting Party is just always good draw in general. It's like a laboratory that is more reliable. It gives you +1 card, +1 action naturally, and then instead of just drawing the next card of your deck, it finds the next card in your deck that you don't already have a copy of and puts that into your hand. So you're really unlikely to dud because, like, if you're missing a draw card, it'll go find you a draw card. And if you had a draw card in your hand already, well, you probably didn't need to find another draw card anyway. Rats as Obelisk is really interesting. Obelisk means every rat will be worth 2 points, and rats are a card that can kind of get a lot of themselves very fast. I wonder if there's a world where you just like 3-pile like villas, rats, and experiments real fast. There's no like cost reduction or talismans or anything that would make villas super easy to pile. I want that to be a thing. I'm not sure it's really a thing, but Villa and Experiment tend to be cards that are relatively easy to pile. And if you just like empty 2 piles and then like buy 2 rats, with 2 rats you can gain the rest of the rats pile pretty easily, because you play 1 rat, it gains another rats, then you play the other rats, it draws the other rats, and then gains you a 3rd rat or 4th rats, and then you repeat that cycle until the rats pile is empty. Now, of course, the downside of that little process is that you trash every card in your deck that's not a rats. So, you can't have any victory cards around, you can't have any treasure cards around, because they'll get trashed, everything except any like action cards you put into play. So it's something you'd have to do on your final turn. And I'm not really seeing an easy way to like set that up super fast here, but like if 2 other piles run low, like you play the game naturally, and like if 2 piles are running low, you would like add rats to your deck, and then empty those piles, then pile out the rats, and then have like 40 points or something absurd. But it's a lot of points. I think it might be worth playing towards, because like even if they have a decent points lead, if you can just do the rats pile out and empty 2 piles, that will be a win. So that's where my mind is headed right now, is how do I make rats pile out effectively. Well, you need to be able to buy stuff to empty piles, I guess. So the payload would have to be like Villa or Trade Route or something, which is pretty bad, or Smugglers maybe. Because again, like if you're doing the rats pile out, the little sequence where you play 20 rats trashes like everything that's not an action card, and so you couldn't like empty whatever other piles were left with treasures, because your treasures would all be trashed. Let's look what they've actually done so far. So Mort opens Experiment Silver. That seems fine to me. Our Silverstein does the same. Likewise, that seems totally fine. Smugglers is alright. Hunting Party is good. Mort goes for Wild Hunt. Is that better than Hunting Party or not? I'm on the fence. Hunting Party is nice when you have like one other card you really want to find, like in this case, Smugglers. Because like if you have a hand that's Hunting Party, Silver, or not, like Hunting Party, Estate, Coppers, or whatever, your Hunting Party is guaranteed to draw something that's not an Estate and Copper, which at this point is like just their Silver or Smugglers. And so it's kind of effectively searching through your deck more. The argument for Wild Hunt is it does draw more in total, and it can't really be terminal because Villa's around. So I think there's upsides to both. I'm not exactly sure which one's better. The smugglers definitely do seem good here, though. I'm a little confused why Mort played the smugglers before playing the experiments, and it seems like Mort didn't particularly actually want to do that because they undid that. So, do you play the Wild Hunt and then buy a villa and play smugglers? Probably not. Well, Mort wants to. My issue with this is like, what is it getting you? You're getting a villa out of it, which is something. Villa's probably a net good card for your deck because you have a bunch of draw cards that you can stack up on. Uh, but like you're gonna have three anyway. You're gonna play your smugglers anyway. All this really gets you is one more villa, but it comes at the cost of triggering this kind of gross shuffle. I'm not sure that's worth it. I'd rather, I think, just shuffle my deck with the hunting party and the wild hunt going right back into my deck. Probably seems a bit better to me. Mort's already going for rats. Huh. I'm not sure what the rats are doing for your deck right now. Like, rats don't really trash cards. If your goal is to get thinner, buying a rat just makes your deck one card thicker, because the rats itself is kind of a junk card. And rats can trash cards, but then you gain another rat to replace the card you trashed. And so, like, if you trash a copper and gain a rats, or trash an estate and gain a rats, you haven't actually made your deck any thinner. You'll just end up having filled your deck with 11 rats, which is more than the 10 starting junk. And so the main usage of rats is like a trash for benefit card, like Butcher or something, where you turn all your coppers and estates into rats, and then all of a sudden the stuff like Butcher and Apprentice and Remodel are much more effective at getting rid of rats than they are at getting rid of coppers and estates. The other usage of rats, we're talking about here is like in the very end game, you just like spam all the rats for tons and tons of points. But in doing so, you trash your whole deck. So that's not something you can really build towards prior to the final turn. I could see getting rats and then like trade rooting them, but I don't know why you wouldn't just trade root the coppers and estates directly. Maybe Mort is just trying to get like an early points lead, and they're just going to hold on to the rats. Not totally sure. Kind of an awkward buy because whatever you buy, your opponent gets 2 copies of. Smuggling Royal Carriage seems kind of nice, although I mean obviously Mort can't know what's in rsilverstein's hand, but smuggling 1 Royal Carriage means your opponent gets 2 of them. Yeah, I mean, not imminently like in the next turn or two, but we're getting close to pilot territory here. Royal carriages are low. Smugglers can make things run real fast, and villas and experiments are never really safe piles. Payload's a little awkward here. Like none of them have gold. They each I think have 1 silver. I think it's mostly coming from smugglers right now, which makes your gains kind of contingent upon your opponent's whims to some degree. I guess you could gain a card you want, knowing that they'll smuggle it, and you can smuggle it back the next turn to get a bunch of copies of it. So Mort's already going hard for the rats. I was thinking you just do this all on 1 turn, because that avoids the problem of having a bajillion rats in your deck. So I would think you probably trade root the rats here and buy Villa to play the smugglers. Kind of awkward drawing a Villa that you can't play now, but no way to get around that. So I would definitely buy Royal Carriage here. I mean, you can't know exactly what your opponent's hand is, but the benefit of buying Royal Carriage over like Wild Hunt or Hunting Party or whatever is your opponent I don't think particularly wants to smuggle Villa or Rats that much. I mean, like, it's probably better than nothing, but what they really want to smuggle is your 5-cost cards. And if there's only 1 Royal Carriage left, even if they find like 2 smugglers and Royal Carriage, and call the royal carriage on the smugglers, there's only one carriage left to gain. And so, contrast with like if you gained a hunting party or something and they find 2 smugglers in a royal carriage or something, they could gain 3 hunting parties off of that pretty easily. Okay, royal carriages are out. As Mort, I'm now strongly thinking about the rats pile out. As rsilverstein, I want to say you need 2 rats to do the rats pile out. Or is it rats? Let me think. Is it rats and one other draw card work? What order does this go in? I think rats and one other draw card of any sort might actually work. Because you play the first rats, you put a rats in the disc. No, you do need 2 rats, don't you? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you need two rats to do the rats pile out. So rsilverstein's probably looking to get a second rats. Well, they can gain them off their smugglers if Mort plays the rats. And then you just try to pile out villas. Looks like probably the easiest pile. Or maybe experiment could be easier. The problem with experiment is they'll start getting sent back. Oh, good. We're getting real close to a win, aren't we? Did rsilverstein take a villa last turn? Maybe not. It'd be nice if you could smuggle some villas. Also, about the point where you want to start thinking about Wolfden. Usually Wolfden's pretty relevant early in the game, but then late in the game you gotta make sure you don't have exactly one copy of anything. Which, they got 2 smugglers, 2 royal carriages, 2 rats, 1 trade route, so you'll want to get a second trade route, or trash the first trade route. 1 silver, again, get a second one or trash the first one. And then I'll score you some extra points. I guess the other thing I didn't mention, but is also sort of implicit in that little rats pile out thing, is you do have to have the ability to draw your deck to do the rats pile out. Because it works when your discard piles and your deck are empty. You get an empty discard pile and deck, and then you play rats to put a card in the discard. Your next rat draws that. Your next rat draws that, and so forth. But that doesn't work if there's like other cards in between that you'll also have to draw. So you do have to make sure you are drawing your deck before you do the rats pile out thing. Ooh, nobles is awful low now too. Good smugglers play could empty the nobles pile pretty easily. What do you take as rsilverstein? Lowering all these just seems really risky. And I'm not sure you can avoid lowering any of the piles, but it does seem risky to do. Trash that silver, right? You want to get those Wolfden points about now? Yeah. I mean, Mort has a huge points lead, so if he can end the game here in the near term, then he's going to win. He just needs to figure out how to empty piles. Of course, the downside of that is his deck is now quite infested with rats. rsilverstein's deck, I think, is running a bit more smoothly. It is awkward. Royal Carriage is, I think, a lot weaker than some of the other Throne Room variants in kingdoms like this, where there's cards that disappear from play, like Experiment, or same with Horses, or Wine Merchant, or whatever. Any card that doesn't stay in play, you can't actually call Royal Carriage on it, because of this little clause here, if it's still in play. And so, whereas Throne Room Experiment would be a really nice combo, or Crown Experiment, or Procession Experiment. Procession Experiment is just, like, absolutely wild. King's Court Experiment. Throne Room, actually, you can't use on experiments, because the moment you play the experiment, it disappears. It's a little sad, but there's plenty of other good throwing room targets here. Feels like our Silverstein's about to win here. They just have a deck that's doing more. They just need to get 2 nobles and they win. Did Mort get a nobles last turn? Mort did. So that Smuggler's 1 nobles, and then you just need to hit 3. Oh, you don't need 3 more. They have a royal carriage on their map. That's the ball game. Now with Wolf Dinner around, I'd always be double checking real fast in the end game to make sure there's nothing that's about to happen in the cleanup phase that's going to affect your points. A really easy way to lose a game with Wolfden in it is if you're like playing with peasant or page or something, and without paying much attention, you accidentally like advance your peasant, and then all of a sudden you now only have like 1 soldier and 1 peasant, and you're at like -6 points or something. So always worth double checking to see that nothing's going to happen in the end phase. Yeah, I feel like Mort went for rats too early. Not 100% sure on that. Like stocking up with the early rats isn't bad. You're turning your estates from 1 point into 2, and kind of gives you a points buffer. But I think it did lead to our Silverstein's deck just being a bit better in the long term. And like you can just gain so many rats at once. Like I know my opponent, even if they take the early rats, there's no way they can reasonably gain more than like 7 or 8 of the rats without really hindering their deck. And so if I know that in like the last turn or 2 I can gain like 2 rats off of smugglers or something, and then use those rats to gain the other 12 rats, I think I'm fine delaying the rats a bit more. Alrighty, jumping into the next game. This one looks real strong at a glance. We've got draw, swashbuckler, silk merchant, paddock to get horses, actions, village green, border village, royal carriage, and paddock eventually once piles start to run low. Trashing, temple or trader, plus buy, silk merchant, or more importantly, horn of plenty. This looks like a pretty clear Horn of Plenty Megaturn Kingdom. You can get trashed real effectively with Temple. I don't think Trader will see play because it's just Temple, but much worse. You can draw with some combination of these 6 cards. Not exactly sure what order you get them all. And then the goal is just to play lots of Horns of Plenty. And then eventually, you'll be able to gain like 8 provinces off of them. So how do you open? I think the 2 plausible openings here would be Temple Silver or Silk Merchant Silver. Temple gets you trashed. Or you could do Silk Merchant Temple maybe on 4-3. Yeah, Palace is on my ban list as well. Just not a very fun card. It encourages you to get lots of treasures and not trash your treasures, which, I don't know. I like trashing things, and I don't like keeping treasures or getting treasures. It encourages play styles that I otherwise would not be doing. Anyways, Silk Merchant Silver is just really good at hitting big numbers very early. It makes you very likely to hit double 5, for example, turn 3 and turn 4, or 4 and 6 could be very good here for like Border Village in a 5 plus another Silk Merchant. Temple, of course, the main advantage is you just get trashed real soon. I think I lean towards Silk Merchant Silver. I think it'd be really nice and very likely if I hit 4 and 6 on turn 3 and 4, I could pick up the Temple, and then I could buy like Border Village Swashbuckler or something, or Border Village Paddock, something like that. That combination seems good to me. What do they do? So, yeah, both of them... Oh, no, one of them went for Silk Merchant Silver. Mort goes for Silk Merchant Temple. You get the draw and the trashing, so you get some of that. The downside, of course, is you're spending the coffer earlier, so you're losing some of the value of the Silt Merchant opening, which is its ability to flexibly hit big numbers turn 3 and turn 4, because part of that's coming from the coffer. And you're likely to be spending that villager early, because there's a, 6th 11th chance that your temple collides with the Silt Merchant, because your Silt Merchant shows up in the same hand as 6 other cards after you play it to draw with. So I think I prefer Silt Merchant Silver, and then just get the temple in the next shuffle. But like obviously there's something to be said for early temple trashing sooner. Then how does it play out? Mort does in fact collide the Silt Merchant in the temple, which is a little sad. And our Silverstein gets the Swashbuckler and Border Village. And what did they buy turn 3? Ooh, they do have an awful turn 3 though. That's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate. Not even hitting 4 with the coffer from Silt Merchant around that's just a real sad draw. Alright, already going for Horn. Is that early? I'm not totally sure. I actually haven't really. I'm not 100% sure what the composition of their deck is right now. So as Mort, you trash Copper and Estate makes sense, and then buy another Silt Merchant. Maybe Village Green. Probably another Silt Merchant, I would think. That Villager seems real viable in the short term because you've already spent yours. I don't think Battlefield is likely to be super relevant here. It encourages greening early, but the problem is Horn of Plenty encourages greening late, like very late. Like, don't green until your last turn usually. And unfortunately for Battlefield, Horn of Plenty is just better. So like I wouldn't rush estates or gardens or duchies or anything. Or even buy early provinces, just because the Horn of Plenty deck I think is going to crush that if you let it. It probably just whoever sets off their big Horn of Plenty mega turn first. So I don't dislike the Village Green. It's a card you want in your deck, but like you knew you had no villagers left and a Silt Merchant coming up, and so now they're likely to have a gross turn, which could have at least been ameliorated by having a villager, and then you buy the Village Green later. Now as Silverstein, you could be considering Village Green here, I think. I don't think I care about the temple points at all. You know, I do love grabbing temple points kind of greedily, but for the same reason I didn't think Battlefield was very relevant here. I don't think temple points will be relevant with Horn stuff. Like one person is just going to be able to gain like 6 or 7 provinces at once, and the difference of who gets to that one turn faster is just going to swamp whoever has more points in the short term. Turn 7. Turn 7 is when they bought Village Green. Is that what the mistake they're describing? Perhaps the buy? I'm not totally sure. So Mort, I assume, is considering whether to play the Village Green for a draw or delay it for next turn. And I'm not totally sure. Delaying it seems fine. I mean, the argument for drawing, I guess, is 4 is a much better number to hit here than 3. And if you delay it and trash a copper, you only have 3 left. And then, I don't know, buying silver seems unappealing. Whereas if you draw, maybe you draw at least 1 coin. I think I'm leaning towards drawing. Delaying it and also not playing your temple also seems totally fine. I don't think that was necessarily a bad play or anything. Silverstein does seem to be in the lead, though. They've already got their Horn. What do you gain here? They can only gain up to a 5 cost. Horn seems fine. Could have been Carriage or Paddock as well. Silt Merchants are very low. That makes sense. Silt Merchant's a good card. You often want to click one out a lot. So as Mort, do you play the temple twice, or do you just leave that Carriage on the mat for next turn? Probably leave it on the mat for next turn. I think here you want to trash the estate and consider trashing the copper, and you're getting either Horn of Plenty or Border Village Horn of Plenty. I think I lean towards leaving the copper for one more turn and getting Border Village Horn of Plenty, because your deck does kind of seem to need villages. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terminals and only 2 villages, so you're pretty over-terminaled. And so between trashing a copper and adding a village, I think at the moment his deck needs to add villages more. Oh, they spent a coffer for Border Village. That works as well. Yeah, I think this is totally fine. Border Village, Horn of Plenty seems really clear. You've got a lot of draw cards, but what you need now are gains. And Horn of Plenty gains cards real well. Like, supposing you're able to draw your deck consistently. One Horn of Plenty gains another one, those two gain two more, those four gain four more, and then you're provincing. Something like that. And that might be a little bit... Oh, no! No. That Temple seems game-losing. Mort now has one more turn with no payload. So they have, like 6 points to show for it. But again, like, compare that little sequence. Like, think about how fast Horn of Plenty escalates. Theoretically, it can double every turn. Like, usually it's a bit less than that because you have to add, like, more draw and stuff like that. But it escalates very fast. And so passing up on a turn where you get your first Horn of Plenty for a turn where you get the Temple is like setting yourself a full turn behind in that very quickly escalating chain. And then if your opponent beats you to the Horn Mega Turn by one turn, that's going to matter a whole lot more than 6 points. So I really dislike the Temple gain. I wonder if you consider trashing the Silk Merchant now for the on-trash benefit. I would definitely like to trash the other temples that I just got. Yeah, trash just the temple and then buy Horn of Plenty. Now you need to play catch up. Opponent is at 3 horns to your 1. It's going to be dicey because Border Villages and Horns of Plenty are both going to run very low very fast. Our Silverstein does need to make sure that he stays on top of how many gains are left. Because, there's a very real risk that if you play sloppily, you leave your opponent the opportunity to pile out. Because Mort does have the points lead. That's the one virtue of the Temple. And so you want to make sure you're not leaving them the ability to pile out horns and Border Villages too easily. Now, Mort can only reasonably do 2 horns, I think. Buy 1, gain 1. So I think this is pretty fine. I don't see any way for Mort to do 4 horns in a turn. Can our Silverstein win next turn? Probably. Do they have 8 uniques? They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they added a paddock. They have 8 now. So next turn, they're threatening to do... What do they have? They have 5 horns? Yeah, they have 5 horns. So they could do, like... Gain... Can they buy 2 horns? Maybe they can't quite pile out next turn. No, I think they can do... I'm not sure how much money they have. The question is whether they can empty the last 4 horns and also score enough points. And they would be getting battlefield points. So it's possible that they could. But they could do like gain 2 provinces, gain 3 horns, buy a horn. Seems like it should be enough, depending on what Mort gains here. But yeah, this looks winning for our Silverstein. Because like, what does Mort do? If they lower the horn pile at all, then our Silverstein just has kind of a trivial win. And if Mort doesn't touch the horn pile, well then how do you win long term with like no gains and no payload in your deck? So I think waiting too long to get into the Horn of Plenty stuff was a bit of a mistake. What do you take here as Mort? Maybe you do take a Horn of Plenty and just hope that your opponent duds. Maybe that's your best option, is you gain a Horn of Plenty so that you're threatening to empty 3 horns next turn, and then you just score some like battlefield point or something. You could do like gain Horn of Plenty, buy 2 estates, and then hope that your opponent can't do 3 horns and also outscore, what's that, 15 victory points, so do more than 10 points. That's probably your best shot, I think. I mean, it should be losing. Our Silverstein, I think, should draw their deck and then should beat that. But there's a chance maybe they dud and then that could win. Yeah, so it looks like Mort... This is a very common mistake. I do this myself all the time with Horn of Plenty. Is the proper play order is you you want to play your other treasures first to increase the number of unit cards you have in your hand, or in play, I mean. Then you play your horn to gain stuff, and then you buy cards. You can't do the buys first and then play the horn, because once you started buying cards, you're no longer allowed to put cards into play. Because the way the buy phase in Dominion works is it's kind of technically two different parts. There's the part of the buy phase where you play your treasures and stuff, and then there's the part of the buy phase where you buy things. And you can't like interlace those two. You can't like play some treasures, buy one thing, play more treasures, buy another thing. Usually it's not super relevant, but for Horn of Plenty stuff, it actually does kind of matter. Because you got to put the treasures in play first, and that's the part of the game where you put the Horn of Plenty in play. And then you start buying things, at which point you can no longer play Horns of Plenty. So Mort gained a duchy off the Horn of Plenty. That play order doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? And yeah, I wouldn't trash my only horn for a duchy. That seems very losing. What you'd want to do would be like if you wanted a duchy, then you could gain horn with horn and buy duchy, and you're threatening to win next turn. Or you could gain... Yeah, okay, that's what they're doing. Yeah, obviously the problem with gaining the duchy and buying Horn of Plenty instead of gaining Horn of Plenty buying duchy is Horn of Plenty trashes itself if you gain the duchy with it because it's a victory card, whereas Horn of Plenty does not trash itself if you gain the horn with it. So now it's just Mort praying that rsilverstein does, I think. I don't know why you would resign there. I mean, given that your opponent's about to win next turn anyway, you might as well just let them play out the turn. And then if they have some miraculous dud, you are threatening to win the next turn. I mean, looking at rsilverstein's hand, I don't think they were going to dud, but you might as well take the chance if you've gotten that far anyway. It's only like a minute more. I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of spectators for this game, mostly just because Quarantine Cup, I think, is still going on. It might be wrapping up right about now. And I assume most people are probably watching that. All right, what have we here? So we've got draw is Slay, which gains horses, or Magpie, which only draws treasures, or conceivably Madman off of Hermit. Action, Village Green, Blessed Village, again conceivably Madman. Trashing, Hermit. You actually can trash alternate starting cards with Hermit here, because you could use Rats to turn the coppers into rats, and then while Hermit can't trash coppers, it can't trash rats. Oh, that's great to hear, Panda Bear Guy. Yeah, if you have any questions, just type them in chat and I'll see if I can answer them. And then plus buy and gains. Well, Sacred Grove and Messenger both have buy. Hermit can gain stuff. Camel Train can exile stuff, which is kind of like gaining it. The restriction is, of course, sending stuff to your exile map means you don't really have it in your deck until you buy another copy of that. So what are you doing here? Ignoring the landmarks for a second, you totally could build an engine here. You can get trash with Hermit and Rats, like I was saying. And then you can draw with like Village and or Village Green plus Slay. And you'll probably want Magpies as well. It's just sort of like bonus draw. Magpie can even interact with Patron in a nice way. You know, Magpie reveals the top part of your deck, and if it happens to reveal Patron, you'll get an extra coffer out of that, which is kind of nice. That's an interaction worth thinking about. And so, if you ignore the victory points, I'm definitely building that sort of engine. Now, looking at the landmarks, Triumphal Arch really favors an engine, because you fill it full of action cards. You're going to hit like 15 points or more from Triumphal Arch, because you have like at least 5 copies of like, say, Horse and Magpie, or Slay and Village Green, or whatever. But Wall, on the flip side, also discourages engines, because engines tend to have lots of cards in them. It also kind of discourages the little Camel Train exiling thing, because stuff left in your exile mat will still count against you. So, I'm not exactly sure quite how much you build here. I think the engine's still very much worth building, but you might green a little bit sooner than otherwise is the case, just because Wall's around. Wall kind of makes it a little bit harder to outscore in the long term if your opponent takes like an earlier lead, because, you know, comparing Province to Duchy, normally Duchies are half as many points as Province. So like to overcome a 3 to 5 Province deficit, you just need to get like 2 more Duchies per Province, which would be, get like 4 duchies in a state, is pretty doable usually for an engine. Whereas if wall's in the game, province is functionally worth 5 and duchy is functionally worth 2, because each of them's coming on -1 victory point from wall. And then you need like 2.5 duchies per province to outscore like a province deficit. And so it can be hard to come back by buying duchies. It does make Triumphal Arch more valuable though, because Triumphal Arch is victory points that aren't really costing you a dead card in your deck. Like if you're going to add the action cards anyway, you're going to have to eat the wall points. At the very least, they're coming in 3 victory points, which kind of offsets that. So how do you open? Definitely getting a Hermit, no question. Hermit seems like absolutely a must-buy. It's a good trasher. It can get you slays, which you want. And then what are you buying with it? Magpie is normally really obvious. I think, I would click on Magpie, Hermit, no question in most kingdoms. The one argument potentially against Magpie is they gain themselves even if you don't want them to. So like if my opponent just like didn't click a Magpie, I would eventually have all 10 Magpies. And then if maybe I'm going for like a patron-based payload, Patron and Sacred Grove, then the Magpies aren't going to help me all too much. Like they'll reveal Patron and be like a cough or anything, but they're not going to draw very often. And then they'll be -10 points from wall. And so I could see an argument for skipping Magpie just on grounds of it kind of saves you 10 points. I think I'd probably still get Magpie. I think I'd probably take Magpie or Hermit anyway, just because the early game boost of like drawing tons of treasures for free from all the Magpies uncontested is probably enough to justify that. It also guarantees you'll win tons of Triumphal Arch points. Like if you had all 10 Magpies, then you just have to get like 1 copy of all the others, like of some other action card to get a bunch of Triumphal Arch points. I think Hermit Magpie is still my answer for how you open. What did they open with? Mort takes Hermit Magpie, and rsilverstein does as well. Yeah, I think that's probably the best opening. Second Hermit seems all right. I think I tend to like letting my hermits turn into into madmen whenever possible. The short-term boost of madman is usually very substantial. It hits high numbers early. It cycles through all the cards in your deck so you can find other trashers. So I think as Mort turn 4, I would have been looking to just buy nothing and let the hermit turn into a madman rather than buy another magpie. You've already got a hermit that you bought turn 3, so it's okay if your hermit gets trashed turn 4 because you'll still have 1 left to trash the other estates. Mort does do that turn 5. They get a camel train. What are you gaining with camel train? It can get you Sacred Groves, which are alright. Camel train does have like a neat little interaction with Village Green, which is when you put the Village Greens in your mat, and then you ultimately exile or unexile the Village Greens by buying one. The process of unexiling Village Greens counts as discarding them. I don't know how you can view the text of the exile mat here, but like the text of the exile mat is like, you may discard all other copies of this card. And so that process of discarding Village Greens from the exile mat counts as discarding. And so then you can immediately trigger the Village Greens and like play them all. Which is kind of a neat little way to get Village Greens in play. Camel Train's it's kind of alright. I think I want the Slays more though, to be honest. Like you got 2 stacks of villages with Village Green and Blessed Village. You're not going to lose out on the village split. But there's only 1 stack of real draw cards here, which are the Slays. And so I think I'd rather just jump straight into the Slays. That being said, Mort, who gained the Camel Train, also has more of the Slays. So I guess that's a bit of a non-issue. What did Silverstein gain with their Hermit? They just got another Hermit back. That makes sense. And another Hermit back. Yeah, I think this is fine. The advantage Silverstein has is having more madmen. I think I would have played the Hermit first there. Because the Hermit's guaranteed to put something into your discard pile, which your madmen can then draw. There's a chance Sacred Grove could do the same thing. Like you could get Earth's Gift or something, and then draw back to whatever you gained. But it's less guaranteed. Whereas Madman, or with Hermit, you know you're putting something in your discard. And so I would rather play the Hermit than the Madman, draw whatever I put in the discard, and... there's not going to play the Madman at all, so I guess that makes it irrelevant. I was thinking you play the Hermit, get like a Slay, draw back around to the Slay, then play the Slay and the Sacred Grove. I think sounded like a good order to me. So they're buying a messenger. The plus buy is all right. You can get that more effectively from Sacred Grove, though. And you got Hermit to gain Slays. Not sure how I feel about the silver. I don't think I want silvers that much. Like, I'd really rather have, I think, fewer payload cards of higher value, like a few Sacred Groves, or maybe even like a few golds, than having a bunch of silvers, because, you know, Wall encourages economizing on like total space in your deck. The silver's not terrible. It's not like an obvious mistake or anything. But I was thinking just buying a Slay. I think probably the best way I'm going to get silver is just there's more important stuff to get here. You have very little reliable long-term draw. Like, Magpies will draw you treasures and stuff, but progressively less and less of your deck is going to be treasures over time, and then those Magpies are functionally just going to be cantrips. And so I'm looking to add Slays as soon as I can, because that's the main draw card, I think, here. The village green choice is also interesting to me. Is there a good way to discard village greens here? I guess there are some boons that can discard village greens. Like, the obvious one is Wind's Gift. I guess you could discard village green to Sky's Gift as well to trigger the village greens. And village green does have the benefit of you could potentially play it for like next turn. So there's some arguments for village green here that make it better than just a standard village. You could also consider just getting blessed villages instead for the short-term boon effect. It's possible they might have mistaken the messenger village green interaction. And maybe that's why they got the messenger. So messenger says you can put your deck into the discard pile. And so maybe they're thinking, that means I discard my whole deck, and then I can trigger every village green in my deck. And if that's what they're thinking, they're going to learn pretty soon that that actually doesn't work. Because, you know, Dominion is like hyperly literal. And so putting your deck into the discard pile actually does not count as discarding your deck. It just sort of like technically a different process. And so like the messenger or scavenger interaction where you like put your deck into the discard does not trigger on discard effects like Tunnel or Village Green. And so that will not work. But that would explain why they got messenger Village Green that turn, if they were planning to do that. I wonder if you start thinking about rats right about now. And the advantage of rats is it turns your coppers into rats, which can then be trashed with Hermit. It's something to think about. I like the idea of trashing cards, especially with Wall around. In the short term, rats is adding a junk card to your deck, because like rats itself is a junk card, and then over the long term, you eventually trash some more coppers. But I think if you're probably playing your Hermits anyway to gain some slays, and so you might as well be using them to trash rats, I think. I don't think buying that last Magpie was super important. I mean, maybe it is, but like Magpie is just not going to do a whole lot for you long term, I think. And it is going to be, you know, negative victory points. I think they're probably higher priority things to buy. So as Mort, you definitely play the Magpies before the Madman, because Madman draws cards based on the number of cards in your hand. And so either the Magpie fails to find a copper, and then you have 5 cards in hand anyway, or it finds a copper, and then your Madman draws more when you ultimately do play it. That's a lot of camel trains, says Mort. I don't think you want that many camel trains, do you? So the first thing I think about is you can set up a nice turn next turn if you play the sleigh to gain 2 horses, and then play the Magpie, which will draw 1 horse, then it'll top deck the other horse, and so you're kind of leaving a horse on the top of your deck for next turn. There's nothing I particularly want to gain and play with the Hermit, I don't think. Gaining a silver doesn't help because you only have 1 buy at the moment, and 7 coppers covers everything you might want to buy. And you don't really need to gain a Slayer Camel Train off your Hermit and play that because you don't have enough actions for that. So I think probably the best thing to do right now is play the Sleigh, play the Magpie. That top deck's 1 horse. And then... Okay, it looks like they're doing that. That's good. And then... what do you gain here? I'm not totally sure. They didn't play their Hermit. That's interesting. I guess that's fine. 3 Sacred Groves is a lot of Sacred Groves. That's so many. How they have what, 1 village? They have a village green, and the deck now has Hermit, 2 Camel Trains, Sleigh, 3 Sacred Groves. Did I count that right? Hermit, Camel Train, 2 Camel Trains, Sleigh. Yes, there's 7 terminal actions and 2 actions. So they're over terminal by like 5. That seems like too much. They're not going to be able to play all of that. Probably play the Sleigh here. I think I value the draw more than I value the gain. But you could consider playing the Camel Train to gain a village green. Actually, I think I like that better. You know you've got a bunch of terminals coming up. You've got like 2 Sacred Groves and a Camel Train down there. If you play Camel Train, gain a village green, and then buy a village green, you can trigger the village green that you exiled with the Camel Train, and then use its effect to set up for a village effect next turn. And then you save that dud, because you're about to have a bad dud coming up, and this guarantees it's not a dud. You get to play all 3 of those actions instead of just one of them. So I think this exile village green, buy village green thing is really important. It looks like Mort is doing that, which is good. Now, what else do you buy? Okay, so they're also going to top deck a village green. That's good. Yes, I think they're kind of saving this turn. Rats. I mean, you could buy the gold because you've got 2 golds in exile. Yeah, gold would be all right. I think gold, rats, or one of the village piles all sound kind of good. All right, so they went with gold. That seems fine. So Silverstein does have the rats. What does Silverstein buy? How are they on Triumphal Arch points? I'm not sure. So Silverstein just wants to green. That seems like at least a turn early, I would think. Like, especially if you're doing the rats thing. The rats thing suggests to me that Silverstein is trying to play for the longer game. You know, you're getting your deck ultimately very clean, and provincing early seems counter to that. So Mort is seemingly crushing it on the Magpie split. I think it's 8-2 in Mort's favor, which it does make sense that you want to add golds to your deck if you have a bunch of Magpies that are good at drawing treasures. So that does make the Mort gold buy from last turn make sense to me. It also means Triumphal Arch points are going to be relevant. As Mort, I'm looking to get 8 of some action card or another. Not sure exactly what that is, be it Village Green or whatever. But that means whatever other action card you get a ton of will score you a bunch of Triumphal Arch points. The downside, of course, is those Hermits, not those Hermits, those Magpies are going to be worth a lot of negative points from Wall themselves. It's interesting to me that Mort would not discard for Sky's Gift. I mean, not that the gold is super important or anything, but you can activate the Village Green by discarding Village Green and 2 coppers, which, that's not bad. So Mort's got how many Village Greens so far? At least 4, but no more than 5. Oh no, it has to be 4 because 1 is in Silverstein's hand. So as Mort, I think I'm looking to get a lot of village greens very soon because that'll score me a lot of points. I would consider right now gaining a silver I don't like. I think gaining a sleigh seems clearly better. I like exiling village green and then buying village green because those are worth 2 points each for you. 3 from Triumph Arch, -1 from Wall. The silver seems unnecessary. You've got tons of payload in your deck with the golds and the coppers and the sacred groves, and you have very little draw. Basically just Magpie, which can only draw your treasures. I'd really like to add a sleigh because you've got surplus action now all of a sudden with all these village greens, and sleigh is a draw card. I'd play Sacred Grove first, I think. Actually, have they seen Wind's Gift already? Yeah, I would play Sacred Grove first. Wind's Gift has not come up yet, and so there's a chance that you could find Wind's Gift and then discard your village green. Discarding village green is always better than playing it because you get to play the card without having to actually play it yourself, so it saves you an action. The village green is like a true +2 actions instead of being like functionally +1 action like village normally is. So you're saving yourself an action plus whatever benefit you got from discarding you get anyway. And so village green discarded is kind of like a lost city plus a village, whereas village green played is like just a village. And so I often look for any scenario I can to trigger village green's effects. So I think Mort is now up 7-1 on the village green split. That means it's Mort, I want 1 more village green at least. And then I'm thinking about hermit piles very soon. I think probably just exile village green and buy a province. And then you've got a points lead and a decent 3-pile threat. Sadly, they got Mountain's Hex for -1 point. Yeah, I think with a good draw, Mort could win this turn. But again, good draw is far from certain when their decks only draw cards or magpies. Yeah, probably just buy a province here. Those like hermits and village greens are ultimately going to pile out at some point. Or maybe they don't. We're actually low enough on provinces that maybe they can send some province. But definitely seems like a province buy. Now Mort has a serious threat of win. Yeah, they have 3 gains in hand. They could gain hermit, exile hermit, buy hermit, but they still need to get rid of 1 village green. What do you top deck as Mort? Probably a village. Yeah, they have 3 terminals in hand, so I think you top deck a village to make sure you can play all 3 of those, because the 1 village you have in your hand is only going to cover 2 of those 3 action cards. That's where I'm leaning at the moment. Also, as Mort, I would strongly consider trashing something from the trash from the hermit, like trash your magpie or something, just because it's a free point. The magpie is going to draw you at most maybe 1 more card, before the game ends, when you draw back to it like once. And I'd rather just have the point. What does Silverstein do? They don't have a whole lot of money, and gaining cheap things doesn't really help Silverstein, because the states are worth 0 points, and again with wall around, and lowering piles is bad for Silverstein. Silverstein? It actually occurs to me I have no idea whether it's a Steen or a Stein in this case. Anyways, yeah, Silverstein's position looks awkward. This looks like a win for Mort. Even those horses are potentially like -2 points if you don't get to play them again. And Silverstein does have like 2 or at least 1 more handful of cards before they get around to the next shuffle of their deck. The magpie, not the magpie, the madman play is interesting though. Maybe our Silverstein can get off like some big turn where they pop their madmen or something. Not sure of that, but at least it's a shot. What do you do as Mort? I think as Mort, I'd probably do something similar. Like exile Hermit, or exile Village Green, gain Hermit with Hermit, and let my Hermit turn into a madman. Because having a madman in your deck seems good. I mean, on top of all the other benefits of madman, like drawing a ton and giving you actions, with wall around, playing madman also scores you a point because you've trashed your Hermit, and the madman will eventually go back to the pile. So Mort should definitely trash something here. Could be Will-O-Wisp, could be Magpie, could be Camel Train. Camel Train's actually probably the best thing to trash. Oh, they didn't trash anything. I don't like that. I would definitely trash something. It's just like one free point. The cards in your deck don't have enough value at this point in the game. You kind of value the points. But this looks like a nice hand for Mort and not a nice hand for Silverstein. So it should be a win anyway here. There's no way Mort can't pile out 2 Hermits. Actually, they literally have it in hand. They don't even need to play the Madman. They could just like play the Sacred Grove and buy both Hermits if they wanted to. Or now exile one and game one with Hermit. They are beyond winning. All right, I believe that's 2-2 right now. Oh, I need to rejoin the lobby. Okay, so I think this game decides the match. I should know this. I just played one of these matches the other day versus Haka. Alright, there we go. More has the answer. Yeah, so they're both at 2 right now. First one are 2.5 wins. So if they tie this, they're both at 2.5. And then they continue playing. That's how weird we should phrase it. Additional games will be played until there's a clear winner. I'm assuming that just means the first non-tied game. SGTM. I have no idea what that means. Let's look at this kingdom. So we've got draw, diplomat, experiment, paddock, swashbuckler. Action, only diplomat, which is hard to activate here, or paddock when pile's lower. Trashing does not exist. And plus, there's plenty of gains. Messengers plus buy, Grave Robber can gain stuff, Horn of Plenty can gain stuff. Huh. This is an awkward kingdom. What do you do here? I mean, like, you add, like, a trasher or something, or, like, a better village, and all of a sudden it just screams, like, huge engine, because Horn of Plenty is, like, an amazing payload. Grave Robber can score you tomb points. There'd be so much to do here. But with no real village, no trashing, I actually have no idea. I mean, like, you could try some sort of, like, Gardens Rush thing with, like, Messenger and Gardens, but that sounds really bad. Especially because, I mean, if you pile up the Messengers or Gardens or something like that, then you have all of a sudden activated their paddocks for them. Maybe that could work. Like, how fast could you empty, like Messengers, Gardens, Experiments, or something. Maybe that's a real thing. I don't know. I honestly just have no idea what I'm doing in this kingdom. It's just like right on the cusp of there's a bunch of interesting ancient things and not quite enough support for them to look like they're any good. You know, like there's no actually if you can empty one pile, then all of a sudden you can use Poacher to activate your diplomats. Maybe that's a thing you can do. You know, like you want Poacher to discard a card because if you play Poacher, you get a hand size down to 4. Then all of a sudden playing diplomat gives you +2 actions. That's still really unreliable though because you have no trashing and you have to line up a hand of both Poacher and diplomat to set off your turn. I'm stumped. I don't know what I want to do. Wolf Den doesn't seem super relevant. I think that's easy enough to avoid. You just think about it during the end game. Tomb, makes Grave Robber look like kind of a thing, but like also it's Grave Robber versus Horn of Plenty, and Horn of Plenty is just generally a much better gainer. Let me just look what they're actually doing. Experiment Poacher. I don't even know how to comment on what they are doing because I don't really have a conception in this kingdom of what I think the right strategy is, so I can't even say whether that's right or wrong. This one's stumping me. Tricky one. I haven't got the slightest idea. I guess you just pick something and stick with it. Be that Gardens Rush or like Swashbuckler Money or Poacher Diplomat Paddock stuff, and then you just commit to doing the thing consistently. I don't know what thing I would pick. Not at all. Well, we'll see how it goes for them. So they both have Horn of Plenty. I'm not sure if that signifies that they're going for a Horn of Plenty mega turn, or if they're just getting a Horn to like gain them some extra cards. Because like Horn could still be a decent gainer even if you never set up a massive Horn turn. I really don't know. Are piles gonna run? Like if I wanted to activate Paddock, do I empty all 10 Poachers? Poachers start to get real bad the moment Paddocks start to get real good. You can't really afford to empty Paddock because at some point you have like 7, 8, 9 Paddocks in your deck that are all really bad until you activate them and then they suddenly get okay. I guess Poachers are low enough now that you can kind of commit to Paddock and then know that if you win the Paddock split, you can just like empty Poachers and be in a better spot than your opponent. They both have 3 Poachers each. That's a lot of Poachers. I mean, I guess Poacher's a fine card here, and either like Poacher's never empty, in which case the Poacher is just like a nice little peddler, or if Poacher's empty, it's because you both empty Poachers and you're both in like kind of a reciprocally bad spot. So I guess you can afford to lower Poachers a bit. Horn. Oh, I get it. I think Mort's saying Horn can gain you experiments. Actually, I like that idea. That's a good way to draw. Horn to gain experiments is, I think, my new favorite strategy. I'm liking that. Because it's basically like a delayed laboratory. The advantage of Horn over Paddock is that it's not terminal. To play multiple Paddocks, you either need to empty a pile so Paddock activates, or play Diplomat, which you can't do until a pile is empty, so you can activate it with Poacher. So Paddock's just real awkward, because in the short term, you can only play one of them. Whereas Horn, you gain the experiments as draw, but you didn't spend an action on it. So you're getting +2 cards, or net +1 card, and not spending an action. So Horn's like a little like laboratory for your next shuffle. I like that idea. I like Horns to gain experiments. Now the tricky part is, unlike horses, where there's like 30 and you never run out, there's only 10 experiments and they're getting 2 at a time. So it's very easy to get like locked out of that strategy. Like if my opponent has 4 or 5 horns, and then you play the horns and gain the experiments. Now all the experiments are stuck in their deck, and then my horns gain nothing if I try to gain experiment. And then next turn, maybe they shuffle back around, they play their experiments in the pile, and then at the end of their turn, they play the horns again to grab the experiments again. And so it would be very easy to just like monopolize the experiments and just keep 10 experiments in your deck and be the only one to draw with them. I don't know about very easy, but it's at least something to think about. Yeah, I think I'm digging this horn experiment stuff. I think that's a good way to make the best of a awkward kingdom. I mean, it's still not like obviously winning or anything because you still got like 10 junk cards to draw through to find your horns, but it definitely seems like a good move by these two to go into that. And then, do you go for the provinces one at a time, or do you try to build a horn mega turn? Drawing all of that is going to be hard. I think you keep building though. I don't think it's time for provinces yet. I think I'd try my darndest to do some sort of horn thing with paddocks and horns and whatnot. There's a bunch of kind of low piles, and if you start winning the paddock split, you could start thinking about emptying the poachers of the horns. It's also possible that like on certain turns, experiments will just be empty because they'll all be in one of the two players' decks, and that's worth thinking about. Horn is also a second way to score tune points. Getting a province with a horn is worth 7 points because you'll get 1 point from trashing the horn. I don't know how relevant that is, but it's a true thing. What do you gain here is Mort. I mean, like, buying province isn't off the table or anything. You could just try to green and not hope to get enough draws to deal with the like cluttered deck. But I think I'd go for like paddock horn or double paddock or double horn or something like that. I think. Horn province, that's alright. rsilverstein had a very short turn there. Do you take those last two experiments? I think you do. It potentially really hamstrings your opponent's horns, although the drawback of potentially powering up your opponent's paddocks. It also hurts their poachers. I think it's net worth it to empty experiments. You get more experiments, you hurt their horns and poachers, and I don't think they have enough paddocks to make the making your paddock non-terminal aspect to be particularly worth it. Although as I say that, they do line up two paddocks that can now both be played only because the experiments are empty. So maybe it wasn't worth it after all. I'm not 100% sure. But I think I would have taken the experiments there. I think Mort has a pretty good position here, though. Do you try to lower piles now? Like, you could consider taking 2 more horns, because now that makes your opponent's poachers really terrible. And then you buy a province, and then you look to pile out poachers in the next turn or two. You could buy a province and gain 2 paddocks. At this point, once you started provincing, I think you're kind of committed, and so the card change is going to involve at minimum buy a province. There's no point to go back to building after you got the points lead. I guess the only other option could be horn poacher, and just go very blatantly for a quick pile out and say you can't outscore me in time. I'll empty the horns and the poachers. I think that doesn't work because your opponent's going to be sending experiments back most likely, And then on top of gaining those things, you'll have to gain experiments to empty the piles. So I don't like the very blatant 3-pile rush. I think 2 horns and a province is probably a good middle ground there. So now as Silverstein, do you gain all those experiments back? Probably you gain at least some of them. I don't know if you can gain all of them. Poachers and experiments is like a realistic threat from Mort. He needs to find 3 horns to do that. He couldn't quite find it. The threat would be use the 3 horns to gain 2 poachers in an experiment, and then buy messenger to distribute 2 poachers, and that would empty those piles. Messenger is like a free extra gain in that case. Yeah, lowering piles seems fine. I think I would have lowered the experiment pile as Mort rather than the poacher pile, but maybe I'd think about that more. But just intuitively, experiment seems like a better card for me than poacher does. I wonder how much gardens are going to be worth. It's a shame they can't hit 8 uniques, but their decks aren't really set up to hit 8 uniques. Like the Horn Megaturn will require more building than they've done. Not saying they ought to have done that building, maybe. But given that they haven't, trying to get provinces off of Horn is possible, but very unlikely, I think. Alright, Mort should buy province here. That seems clear enough. Don't give your opponent the ability to double or anything. Oh, they also have a horn gain. Province Duchy? I mean, there'll be like 1 province left next turn. I think Province Duchy, that's worth 10 points. I think that puts you out of reach long enough to potentially find like 8 coins in your deck again. Gardens. Oh, maybe Gardens is better. I hadn't even thought about Gardens. I don't know how many cards are in their deck right now, but it is quite possible Gardens is worth equivalent to or more than Duchy. I just haven't really had a great conception of what to do in this kingdom from beginning to end. Yeah, trashing these for Gardens makes sense. Our Silverstein just kind of like in a mad dash to score enough points to not immediately lose. Because the problem is if our Silverstein doesn't take all these duchies, then even if they hit 8 next turn, like if Mort misses 8 and they hit 8, buying province would still be losing. So Silverstein just really need to keep themselves in range of like a province buy would win, and then hope they hit 8 before Mort does. But that's looking dicey. Oh, actually, Mort has a kind of awful turn here, don't they? If these could be gardens, they'd be in lovely shape. But they cannot be gardens. I'm kind of tempted to just pop all 3 Horns of Plenty for estates. As sad as that sounds, it's about time to count Wolfden points. I haven't done that. Mort might be thinking about Wolfden points right now, which they probably should be. Like if these are 3 of the 4 horns they have left or something, you don't want to pop all 3 because then you'll lose 3 points from that. But like if we set aside Wolfden points for a second, then pop 3 horns for 3 estates is 6 points because you'll get the tomb points plus the estate points, and you could like buy a 4th estate. And that's important because it sets you just outside of enough for like a single province buy to win. So I would think about doing that. I mean, the problem is you're also about to trigger shuffle though. So if you're putting a bunch of crap cards in your shuffle, then it maybe hamstrings your ability to hit 8 in the following turns. But yeah, this is a very sad hand for Mort to find most of their horns. Our Silverstein might be back in this. Yeah, like if Silverstein hits 8 here, they win. Because they can buy province and then turn the horn into something. A state even. Province plus a state would be enough. Yeah, R. Silverstein has noted the poor draw. Yeah, I agree with that. I have not even attempted to count how many horns Mort had, but if you count the horns and then realize that you have one horn left, then that makes the horn estate thing a total no-go. In fact, is that what just happened? Maybe it is. Yeah, I don't like this halfway thing, I don't think. The reason to pop the horns for estates was to keep enough of a points lead that province couldn't beat you. If you're gonna give R. Silverstein the room to like win by buying province, you might as well just gain some like experiments or something to maximize your chance of hitting province next turn. Now we just roll the dice for a bit. R. Silverstein's hand looks well set up to potentially hit 8. Another sad Horn of Plenty play. But like for example, if that like there's a chance that estate might have been one of the ones they just gained and that might have hurt. These are sad horns. Oh, this is looking like it might be a win. It's a lot of draw. Got 6 in hand, 7 in hand. They just need to find like a copper. They surely have it. Yeah, they have it in hand. Oh wait, they don't have enough points, do they? Uh-oh. Oh no, I think playing this experiment will solve that. If they play this experiment, I'm pretty sure that will... Wait, what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they counted it and I was miscounting. I kind of assumed that experiment was their last experiment. Let me look. Didn't Mort just gain 2 experiments? Maybe not. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a blunder. I'm like 75 to 80% confident. Mort has 2 experiments and R. Silverstein has 1. And if Silverstein had just played that experiment, they would have gained 3 points by resolving the Wolfden problem and then been in range to just buy province and win. I think R. Silverstein just threw the game there. I'll have to go back and look. But I'm like relatively confident that was a forced win for R. Silverstein with like 1 more click. In any case, that's the game. Mort is now moving into the top 8 of the 3rd quartile of the tournament. All right. I'll end this recording now. See you all around.